My name is Peter and I am a student at Greenfield University. This story still sends shivers down my spine every time I recall it. It was supposed to be an exciting night road trip, an adventure organized by our university. Little did we know it would turn into the most horrifying experience of our lives. It was 14th of October 2020, a chilly Friday evening, and the bus was filled with the vibrant chatter of students. Our destination was a remote campsite, a few hours away from the university. The bus was packed with my friends and classmates Claire, Jason, Sophia, Mike and Lucas, among others. We were all in high spirits, looking forward to a night of fun under the stars. The journey began around 8 p.m. The sun had set, and darkness enveloped the countryside as our bus roared down the winding roads. We sang songs, played games, and shared ghost stories to pass the time. Little did we know that one of those ghost stories would soon become our reality. As the bus cruised along the desolate road, the driver, Mr. Thompson, a middle-aged man with a grizzled beard and a weary face, seemed uneasy. He kept glancing at the rearview mirror, his eyes filled with an unspoken fear. I shrugged it off, attributing it to the eerie tales we were sharing. Around 11 p.m, we reached a stretch of road that cut through a dense forest. The trees loomed over us like dark sentinels, their branches swaying ominously in the wind. The moonlight barely penetrated the thick canopy, casting eerie shadows on the road. Suddenly, the bus jolted to a stop. The engine sputtered and died. Confusion spread among us. Mr. Thompson stepped out to check the problem, his flashlight flickering weakly in the dark. Minutes turned into an eternity as we waited for him to return. Claire, always the curious one, suggested we step out and stretch our legs. Reluctantly, we agreed. As we exited the bus, the cold air bit into our skin, and an unsettling silence hung in the air. No crickets, no rustling leaves, just an oppressive stillness. Jason, trying to lighten the mood, started telling another ghost story. But this time his voice was shaky, lacking its usual bravado. He spoke of a haunted forest where people had vanished without a trace. We laughed nervously, but there was a growing sense of unease among us. Then we heard it, a low, guttural growl emanating from the darkness. Our laughter died instantly. We huddled together, our eyes darting around, trying to locate the source of the sound. The growl grew louder, more menacing. "Maybe it's just a wild animal," Mike suggested, his voice trembling. Sophia, always the skeptic, nodded. "Yeah, probably a bear or something." But deep down, we knew it was something far more sinister. Mr. Thompson returned, his face pale and eyes wide with terror. "Get back on the bus, now!" he shouted. Panic set in as we scrambled back into the bus. The door slammed shut behind us and Mr. Thompson tried to restart the engine, but it wouldn't budge. The growling grew louder, closer. We peered out of the window, straining to see what was out there. And then we saw them, glowing red eyes staring back at us from the darkness. Dozens of them surrounding the bus. The growls turned into eerie whispers, and shadows began to move, closing in on us. "What the hell is that?" Lucas whispered, his voice barely audible over the pounding of our hearts. "I don't know," I replied, my voice cracking. "But we need to get out of here." Mr. Thompson kept trying to start the bus, his hands trembling. The shadows grew closer, and the whispers became more distinct, almost like a chant. A sense of dread washed over us as we realized we were trapped. Claire grabbed my arm. "Peter, what are we going to do?" I looked around, my mind racing. "We need to distract them. Buy us some time." Mike, always the brave one, stood up. "I'll go out there. Maybe I can draw them away." "No," Sophia protested, "it's too dangerous." But Mike was already at the door, determination etched on his face. "I'll be back. Just get this bus started." He stepped out and the door closed behind him. We watched in horror as he walked towards the red eyes, his flashlight cutting through the darkness. The whispers grew louder, more aggressive. Mike shouted, waving his flashlight, trying to draw their attention. Suddenly, the shadows lunged at him. He screamed, and then there was silence. The red eyes turned towards the bus again, their whispers now a cacophony of eerie voices. Mr. Thompson finally managed to start the engine. The bus roared to life, and we sped down the road, leaving the horrors behind. But the damage was done. Mike was gone, and we were left with a chilling reminder of that night. We eventually reached the campsite, but the mood was somber. We reported the incident to the authorities, but they found no trace of Mike or the creatures. The forest was declared off-limits, and we never spoke of that night again. To this day, I can still hear the whispers and see those glowing red eyes. We went on that road trip seeking adventure, but what we found was a nightmare that will haunt us forever. It was June 25th, 2023, a perfect summer day for a family road trip. My name is Mark, and I was eager to take a break from my hectic work schedule. My wife, Lisa, and I decided to take our 2 children, Luke and Sarah, on a holiday. We had been planning this trip for months and had everything packed and ready to go the night before. Our destination was a cozy cabin in northern Michigan, surrounded by nature, perfect for a relaxing getaway. We left our home in Detroit at 8 a.m., the kids bubbling with excitement. The drive was supposed to take about 8 hours, and we planned to make several stops along the way to enjoy the journey. As we headed north, the sky was clear and the weather was warm. We played games, sang songs, and enjoyed the beautiful scenery. Around 2 p.m., we decided to take a break and stop for lunch at a roadside diner that looked like it hadn't changed since the 1950s. The kids were thrilled with the idea of eating at a real-life diner. The owner, an elderly man with a friendly smile, served us burgers, fries, and milkshakes. We chatted for a while, and he wished us a safe journey as we left. Feeling refreshed, we got back on the road. The GPS guided us through scenic routes and everything seemed perfect. However, as we drove further north, the sky began to darken. By 4:30 p.m., a heavy rainstorm hit us out of nowhere. The downpour was so intense that it became difficult to see the road. The GPS signals started to become erratic, leading us onto a narrow, winding road that didn't seem to be on our map. At 6:15 p.m., we passed a weathered sign that read, "Blackwood Forest, enter at your own risk." A chill ran down my spine, but I tried to brush it off. We were too far along to turn back, and the idea of reaching our cabin kept us going. By 7:30 p.m., the rain had stopped, but a dense fog began to settle in. It was getting darker, and the eerie silence of the forest was unsettling. We soon found ourselves low on gas, and to our relief, we spotted an old, dilapidated gas station. It looked abandoned, but we had no other option. I pulled in and got out to see if there was any way to get gas. The place was in ruins, with broken windows and overgrown weeds. I felt uneasy, but decided to explore a bit. Inside, I found an old man sitting behind the counter, seemingly out of place. He looked up at me with a piercing gaze and asked what I needed. I explained our situation, and he nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. He gave me vague directions and a stern warning. "Don't stop for anything, don't look back." His words sent a shiver down my spine, but I thanked him and quickly returned to the car. As we drove off, the fog thickened and the road became more treacherous. Suddenly, at 8:30 p.m., the car sputtered and came to a halt. We were stranded in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by darkness. Panic set in as I tried to restart the car, but it was no use. We were stuck. Lisa suggested we wait until morning, but I was too anxious to sit still. I decided to look for help, hoping to find a house or another gas station. I grabbed a flashlight and ventured into the forest, promising to return soon. After walking for what felt like hours, I saw a faint light in the distance. It was now 9 p.m., and the fog made it difficult to see clearly. As I approached, I realized it was a small cabin. Desperate for help, I knocked on the door. An elderly woman answered, her face wrinkled with age, but her eyes sharp and alert. I explained our predicament, and she invited me in, promising that her son could help. The cabin was cozy, with a fire burning in the hearth. She offered me a seat and disappeared into another room. Moments later, a tall man appeared. He listened to my story and agreed to help, saying he had a tow truck that could bring our car to the cabin. Relieved, I thanked him and followed him back to the road. When we reached the car, Lisa and the kids were visibly relieved to see us. The man quickly hooked up our SUV and towed it back to the cabin. Once there, he fixed the car, explaining that it was a minor issue with the battery. We were grateful and decided to stay the night in the cabin, as it was too late to continue our journey. The elderly woman prepared a simple but hearty meal for us. We sat around the table, eating and chatting. She told us stories about the forest, some of which were quite unsettling. She mentioned that the forest had a dark history, with many travelers disappearing over the years. Her son, who had been silent until now, warned us not to wander outside after dark. At 10:30 p.m., we settled into a small room they had prepared for us. The kids fell asleep quickly, exhausted from the day's events. Lisa and I lay in bed, listening to the sounds of the forest. The wind howled and the trees creaked, creating an eerie symphony. Around midnight, I woke up to strange whispers. I glanced at Lisa, who was still asleep, and decided to investigate. As I walked down the hallway, the whispers grew louder. I reached the living room and saw the old woman and the man sitting by the fire, chanting in a language I couldn't understand. Their expressions were twisted with malevolence. My heart raced as I realized something was very wrong. I hurried back to the room and woke Lisa, whispering that we needed to leave immediately. We quietly gathered our things and crept to the front door. Just as we were about to leave, the chanting stopped and the old woman and the man blocked our way. "Leaving so soon?" the woman asked, her voice dripping with malice. Her eyes glowed with an unnatural light, and I felt a surge of terror. We bolted out of the cabin, the figures chasing us through the forest. The fog was thicker than ever, and it was difficult to see where we were going. We stumbled onto a dirt road and saw headlights approaching. Desperate, we flagged down the car. The driver, a middle-aged man, pulled over and helped us into his vehicle. He listened to our story in disbelief, but agreed to take us to the nearest town. We reached the town and reported the incident to the authorities. They conducted a search but found no trace of the cabin or its inhabitants. It was as if they had vanished into thin air. The memory of that night still haunts us. We never found out who the old woman and the man were or what they wanted. All we know is that we were lucky to escape with our lives.